Hello, and welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby, the show where we talk about the hard things. I'm Toby Dorr. In today's episode, we'll see how ministry coming from a place of love and support creates a healthy community. Our guest today is Marla Smith, a mother, grandmother, Christian care provider, clinical researcher, and mentor. Because of her sincere love and concern for women and their care, Marla is currently serving as a mentor with Catholic Charities in their Welcome Home Reentry Program. As a mentor, she works with women who were previously incarcerated, assisting them in their efforts to become reacclimated to society. Additionally, through her Fearfully and Wonderfully Made ministry, Marla educates young girls about puberty, with a special emphasis on their bodies as they prepare for menstruation. Hi, Marla. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Toby. It's my pleasure. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you again. I like to ask all my guests a question that gives us a peek into who you really are. What's your favorite color, and what does your color say about you?
So my favorite color is purple, as is evidenced by these glasses. These just happen to be readers, but in purple for me, I like eggplant, so the darker color is my favorite of the shades. However, it symbolizes royalty. When I think about lavender, though, lavender is a calming color, and it's so helpful to relax. So I like to believe that when I enter a room or when I'm interacting with people, I am a presence for calm and relaxation and a comforting spot for them.
That's excellent. And purple really is a powerful color, but it's also a soothing color. So you can have the whole breadth of what you need with that color.
Yes.
I think that's beautiful.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites too. I'm a purple person as well. Can you tell us about a crossroads in your life that pushed you in a different direction?
So I think probably it happened early in life. My parents divorced when I was 10, and it really forced me to grow up. The home life was challenging. And then there was, I used to say we went from riches to rags, and my mom probably wouldn't like for me to say that, but the reality is we went from being comfortable to having to struggle to be able to figure out how to do things. And my mom was a single mom with 3 girls trying to help us figure it out. And from there, the trajectory was learning how to speak, not just talk, but to speak so that people could hear and listen. And so that was my process through the years. It took me a minute to get it. But I realized from that little girl, that little 10-year-old girl to now, I've learned that I do have a voice and that I have some things to say.
You absolutely do have a voice, and I know that you use it well, especially in the DC community. You recently received your master's degree in Christian counseling. What led you to that field?
I'd spent a lot of time, like in my church, just doing lay counseling with women, especially women in the 25 to 35-year-old age group. I started with little folks as my children were little. And then once I was at a different level, I started working with women 25 to 35 years old. For whatever their needs were, I was the person that they would call. And because of that and that ministry, I wanted to fine tune my skill set to make sure I knew what I was saying to them, right? Not just talking off the cuff, but what God says, and then that my words would match my actions and things. So I began pursuing the degree, and I finished it just this past August.
I think that's beautiful. I love when you said that you want your words to match your action. I think that's a really strong guiding point, because our actions even speak louder than the words. So it's, it makes perfect sense to try to keep them in sync. And, I admire people, especially women, who go back and get a degree later in life, because life is busy. You have a lot of responsibilities, and it's crazy. And I know I got my master's degree in my 50s. So what was that experience like? Going back to school, was it easier? Was it harder than when you went earlier?
It was easier from the perspective that I didn't have little folks, because it took me a little bit to finish my bachelor's as well. And I had children. And so I had the help of good friends watching my children when I was completing my undergraduate degree. This time it was easier from the perspective that I didn't have anyone at home that I had to take care of. but I am not a nighttime person, but I found myself up very late night reading and trying to write papers.
Yes.
So it took a toll that way. I am well into my 50s. And so it was a little bit of a challenge, but as I got closer to the end, I would say that I'm still in the tunnel, but I can see the light. And then finally I reached the end. Yes. So it was great.
And I think it makes a difference too, when you go back and get your master's degree, after you've already kind of started a life and have a career and know what direction you're going, then you really see the purpose of that degree better than you would if you went when you were 24 and you're just guessing at what you want to do in life. So
trying to figure it out.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think that's beautiful. Volunteering is a beautiful way to give back to the community. In fact, in 2021, you were named Volunteer of the Year in the DC area. How does volunteering fill your cup?
I was going to say with the last point that it was a perfect segue to talk about the volunteer work that I do, because again, with Catholic Charities and their Welcome Home Reentry Program, it is such a dynamic experience for me. I started working with returning citizens because I had a nephew who had been incarcerated. I met a gentleman actually I had a girlfriend first who had a business called Mission to Mobilization. And so I started working with her, and it was a gentle introduction to working with returning citizens. The more I did, the more I wanted to do, the more I wanted to be able to help. And so marrying that with the degrees, similarly, like not pushing like Christianity or anything, but the compassion is there. And I think that skill set is enhanced with the degree. But then the more I talk to and work with women, it comes forward.
Yeah. I think that's just beautiful. And I can't think of a group that is more in need than returning citizens because, I served 27 months in prison, which isn't a long time compared to a lot of people's sentences, but it was long enough. And I had a 6-month period of adjustment. It's just weird coming out. And I certainly didn't expect that. I thought I'd come back into life and just drop right back in where I left off, but it doesn't work that way.
And I think that's the misconception probably more with women, because we are already very busy, right? Regardless of what our paths are, whether you have children or not, you're caring for somebody's child or somebody's something. So we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're used to multitasking. So though I've never been incarcerated, working with women who have, they come back to my life has been going on and now I need to catch up. And I think that's what happens. So yeah,
it is true. Your life stops when you are incarcerated, and it stops at the point when you went into prison. And everyone else outside, your children, your family members, your parents, their lives are going on. And when you come out, you've missed that chunk of what's happened. And you don't just drop right back in where you came from. You've got to find a new way, and you've got to, tread a new path. So I think that's beautiful. And I really do think it's something that I could see mentoring having a big impact on. And I know here in the DC area, Georgetown University has a program called the Pivot Program. And they have some students who work with returning citizens. And I think one of the women you mentored went through this program. Can you tell us a little bit about what that program is?
Sure. Pivot is a program designed by Georgetown University, and they work in collaboration with organizations who are willing to support returning citizens. So it emphasizes entrepreneurship. The folks who are in the program, you have to apply to be in the program. But once you're accepted in the program, you do receive a stipend. You have classes that you're taking at Georgetown University, with the Georgetown professors, which is excellent.
Wow.
And then you have the opportunity to have an internship with one of the companies that supports the program. The thought is, or the hope is, that you'll either be hired by the company, you'll definitely learn, so you're fine-tuning that skill set, and then you can either go on with your entrepreneurial efforts or work for those companies or another company. It's an amazing program.
I think that's excellent, because one of the hardest things when you're getting out of prison, I think, is to find a job, and a job that will be, have a livable salary. And, I had a bachelor's degree when I went to prison, and I had a corporate job, a 6-figure job, and I expected I would come back and be able to just get a job and move on. I couldn't even get hired at PetSmart as a dog trainer. It's unbelievable
amazing.
to me, the barriers that are put up. And so what I ended up doing is starting my own business because I couldn't
Mhm.
find a job in an industry that would pay me enough. So I started my
Mhm.
own business. And I love that program teaches women about entrepreneurship because it's a great way to move forward, I think. Sounds like a beautiful program.
It is a beautiful program, and it's not just for women. It is for returning
Mm-hmm.
citizens, though, and you
Yes,
do have to
yes,
apply. And you're right. It is amazing the hurdles that
yes.
returning citizens
Mm-hmm.
have to go through in order to just live. Right?
Yes,
It's
yes, just
amazing.
to get by. And I know you're really familiar with all the opportunities in the DC area, but every community
Mhm.
has organizations who need volunteers. How would you recommend
Mhm.
someone find those opportunities in their local area?
So, other than the trusted Google, there is a place
Yes.
called the Bridge, the Bridge Center at Adams House, and it is in
Ah,
Prince George's County. The director of that center, his name is Dr. Ron Garrett. He is the returning citizen guru. He is a returning citizen himself, and has done TED Talks. But he's a mentor. He facilitates a lot of programs. Working with so many different areas, but the Bridge Center is literally that. So returning citizens, if you have healthcare issues, it
mm-hmm.
really is a place to fill gaps in the community for people who are in need of whatever services they offer. It's he refers to it as the Morca of PG County, and so the
Wow.
Morca is the Mayor's Office for Returning Citizens
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Affairs. So yeah.
Excellent. That
Mhm.
is excellent. What is the biggest gap you see when mentoring women reentering society? What's the most difficult hurdle?
Just what we were talking about earlier, getting them to just kind of slow down and take their time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, especially if it's a woman who has children, and another caveat is sometimes people don't tell their children the truth about going
Oh,
to
yes.
prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's
Mm-hmm.
coming and trying to mend relationships. Either the children know or they don't know. So if they don't
Mm-hmm.
know, then it's where have you been? What
Right.
assignment have you been on? If they know, you could be dealing with anger and just trying to mend those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a husband, significant other, whomever they may be, getting back into their good graces, because
Mm-hmm.
9 out of 10 times you may have been lying to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are natural, I'm just going to put myself in here with women, we naturally have a lot of things that we want to do. We can create a list in our heads, even if we don't write it down. And that's one of the things, actually, with someone that I'm working with now,
Mm-hmm.
is just getting her to just take a breath and it's going to be okay. But we want it
Mm-hmm.
all to be done like now.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And, I have always we actually live in the same house with my stepson and his family. So our grandkids are
Mm-hmm.
part of our life every day. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been really honest with my grandkids about my past. And they know I've
Mm-hmm.
been to prison and they ask me, they always are interested in knowing more about it. But one
Mm-hmm.
day my granddaughter came down and I was on doing an interview, a TV interview, and someone
Mm-hmm.
asked me about my criminal charges or something. And my granddaughter, she heard that. She came to me afterwards and she was just in tears and she said, "Grandma,
Mm-hmm.
how come you're a criminal?" And I said, "Well, I've been to prison." She said,
Mm-hmm.
"Yes, but I didn't know you were a criminal. Criminals are bad people. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we think we're sharing what's happened, but
Mm-hmm.
kids see things so differently and you just have to be prepared for those moments, I think.
You do. I took a class or a training through Catholic Charities called bibliotherapy, and it's
Mhm.
really using books to kind of help children understand. So whether the parent is incarcerated or even coming home, there are books that have been designed to help with that conversation.
Mhm.
And you really, like, being honest is really the best thing, right?
I
Just
think
telling
so
them the
too.
truth, yeah,
Mhm.
and allowing them to ask whatever questions they may have
Mhm.
and trying to explain it, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, it was a lot easier for me because my grandkids weren't even born until 10 years after I was out of prison. So I had come
Got
to
it.
accept it. I know I
Mm-hmm.
would have had a harder time if they'd
Mm-hmm.
been in my life while I was in prison. It would have been a lot more difficult. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think I had the easy way out, having some time under my belt to get used to talking about my past.
Yes.
I think women's needs are so different from men's. And traditionally, most of the reentry programs that have been programs developed for men because women aren't, they don't go to prison as often as men do. So how do you adapt programs to serve women instead of men? What are some of the differences that you've seen?
But actually, other than what we were talking about before, I think that the needs are the same. One of the things I think about is like with technology changes, depending on how long someone is incarcerated. Cell phones may not have been here, or they may have been here in a whole different model. So that level of education for women, I think, is significant. But there is also, it's a program that we've done like with Dr. Garrett, but then another friend of mine found it, and it's a simulation. So it's not just for women. And I think that's one of the things to point out as well, because women do go to prison, but I think we see more in the media of men going, right? But women are dealing with some of the same things. And so the difficulty from getting health care, finding a job, finding housing, having enough money to do, it's all the same for either sex, male or female. But the simulation, it takes people through like a day in the life or a month in the life of someone who's returning home, and all of the different things that you need to have in place. It's an interesting thing. Would love to invite you to participate in the next time they're doing one.
I would love to do it, actually. So yes, be sure and call me. I think
it's a great experience. I've done it as a volunteer. I mean, I used to work with a friend of mine, but I've done it as a volunteer, just sitting at a table, like healthcare table. So if you come and you don't have all of these documents in place, then I have to send you back to your probation officer. It's really an interesting dynamic. I really think that and maybe it's because I'm so involved, but I really believe that there's becoming more of an awareness of helping returning citizens or the needs for the services that they require.
Well, all of society benefits if we reintegrate people into society and they can become contributing members. Nobody wins if they end up going back to prison. That's not a win for anybody. So I think society has a huge stake in successful reentry.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at recidivism rates, what you just said is absolutely pertinent. If we don't support, then that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be kind of a revolving door. And I do think that it would be great if we could start even in advance of folks coming home. Like if you just start working with people, even if it's 3 months in advance of them coming home. I
agree.
So that they're starting to get reacclimated and then doing those check-ins. The programs are great. The program that we have with Catholic Charities, the Welcome Home Reentry Program, is excellent, the mentoring piece. But we also partner with other organizations for transitional housing to support in those ways as well. And I think doing the check-in, so that's why the mentoring helps. I have a weekly conversation with my mentees. We do once a month, face-to-face if we can. During COVID, it was a little bit different, but I did Zoom calls. And it really makes a difference. People know that you care.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does make a difference because, when I was released from prison, I was at a federal prison in Houston, Texas, and it was in a high rise. And they just said, here's your stuff. Go out the door. You have a bus ticket at 1:00. And it's like, how do I get to the bus station? I mean, I was perfectly capable of getting myself to a bus station before I went to prison. But those months in prison, I don't even know how to, go take a shower without being told it's okay. So it's such a different mindset. And I was really stunned at how inept I felt because I was a pretty strong person who, was always in control of my life. And even I felt like I didn't know the next step.
And that what you just shared is a phenomenon. It happens all the time. Here you go. And so, but I'm supposed to be an upstanding citizen, right? I'm not supposed to go back to whatever my other ways are. I'm supposed to just make it. And that's why, like the Bridge Center at Adams House, Catholic Charities Mentoring Program, that's why that's why these organizations exist, because people need the help. But the thing is, getting the information to them before they come home, giving a bus ticket to someone and saying, find your way. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a dime if there are even pay phones anymore. What am I supposed to do? And quite honestly, even listening to you share that, and I know that I've had mentees it breaks my heart. Like really and truly, I'm holding back tears because of the lack of concern from people who you would think should understand. It's basic compassion. They're basic needs. We go back to psychology and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know that people have things that they require. So why wouldn't we try?
Yes.
So I'm, just trying to do my little part.
I think it's beautiful. I think what you're doing is just beautiful. Do you stay in touch with women you've mentored after you're no longer mentoring them?
Some of them, yes. A couple of them I've been in touch with. Others, I'm sure probably want to forget about it all and just move on. But the ones who are relatively my contemporaries, we are able to stay in touch. And I'll tell you, it makes me think of the first time, like in advance of COVID, we used to have group meetings, weekly group meetings with some of the women who were at some of the transitional housing back at the Catholic Charities office. And so I remember that first time I was going to one of the group meetings and I thought, what am I going to do? I've never been incarcerated. I won't be able to relate to these women. And it took 2 seconds, right, to get into a room full of women to know that we are just women. We all have a story. We all have a circumstance. I just had never been incarcerated, but I had other things in common with so many other women there. It was beautiful. And that was also a way for the potential mentees to meet potential mentors. We would be in a room together just sharing, and then you could connect with someone and then, develop the relationship that way. That was great. Now it's more Zoom and conversations, and we are able to do some face-to-face now, but yeah.
I think that's excellent. And women need that kind of an emotional supportive connection. I think it's just almost like breathing for us. And a mentor is a perfect solution. I think that's just beautiful work. What can someone do to help if volunteering doesn't work for them? What other avenues do they have to be part of a solution?
So when we say volunteering, like maybe mentoring isn't the type of thing, but there are other ways to volunteer services, like even making phone calls. So you don't necessarily have to develop a relationship with someone if you're uncomfortable. But there are other things that are needed, even if it's donating things, participating, like I said, in the simulation. You're not necessarily mentoring or having to provide advice to someone, but you definitely can make a phone call or do administrative work. Because again, for as much as we believe that there should be a wider view for what's going on, we need more support, and it could look all kinds of ways. Yeah.
So basically,
and I'll tell you, if you call Ron Garrett I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was saying there's just all kinds of needs out there. Yeah.
There are. And I was going to say, Dr. Garrett is amazing. If you tell him you're interested in doing anything, whether it's volunteer, whatever it is, I promise you, he'll find something for you to do to help the cause.
That's excellent.
He's busy, but he's busy and he's accessible, and it's great. Yeah.
That's excellent. I love hearing that. You've also started a personal mission, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made Ministry. Can you share with us your vision for that organization?
Yes, that is the best. I spend time with little girls, young girls. So between 8 probably is the youngest to maybe 11 years old, educating them about puberty, having a conversation with them really about puberty and their bodies. And the emphasis is on them learning and understanding their menstrual cycle. So it's not just that you're going to have a cycle, but it's this is what happens when your egg leaves the ovary and the path that it takes and why it occurs and what's, what God says about our bodies. And I'll tell you some of the conversations, some of the questions. It's so much fun. Yeah. The girls are fun.
I can imagine.
And so there's always something that makes me say, okay, wait, whoa. And so it's a room just with the girls, without parents. I did do it recently, and my goddaughter was with me, and she was just listening in because her daughter was part of the conversation. And it's amazing. The girls, because nowadays, even though, parents, I'm sure, monitor, but there's so much that can feed information to our children. So my desire is just that they understand it correctly. Long term, it could be a means for understanding pregnancy or unwanted pregnancy, preventing it, understanding that this is something that happens, why it happens. So yeah, I
think that's so beautiful, that we get that out there, because I remember myself when I had my first cycle, I was just like dumbfounded. Like, what?
Right.
I don't want this. Why is I going through this? And I just think
Exactly.
it's difficult. Well, no, I won't say it's difficult. I'd say it's kind of awkward to have that conversation with your mother. I think having it in a group, that you feel safe, nobody's going to
Yes.
say, what are you thinking? So
Right.
it's a unbiased setting to have a really difficult a difficult discussion about something that we all encounter
We
and
all
there's no
deal
way
with.
around
Right.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I love
Yes.
that
Yes.
idea.
Yeah. And
I just love it.
the moms are really grateful as well. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They are really grateful because similarly, they share their stories of their first cycle and like, oh my goodness. So, and one of the things that we do as well is we provide the girls with a kit to put in their backpacks. So in case they have their cycle at school, so that they are prepared. And it's really a lot of fun. It's really a good thing for them.
I think it would be. And definitely something that we don't talk about because who wants to talk about that? But
exactly.
it's so necessary. And I think it would take
is.
away the whole stigma of, oh, this is something I should hide. I should be embarrassed about, and brings it out into the open as this is part of life. I think that's healthy.
And I remember being embarrassed going to buy sanitary products.
Yes. Yes.
So it's so unnecessary, but so that's what makes it a necessary conversation. And so I am enjoying having it. Yes.
I think that's just beautiful.
Thank you.
What's one question you wish I'd asked you? Is there something you'd like to share that we haven't talked about?
So one thing I wish you'd asked me that it's not necessarily related to the ministries, but it's how we met. And not so much about the person who introduced us, but just the idea of networking.
Yes.
Because, when I look at you, I look at me, people might see us and never imagine us having met or being friends or connected in any way, right? Like, how did they come to be?
That's right.
But the reality is it's because of people like you who are willing to share their stories. You've met my friend, Catherine, and that's how we connected. She's someone who's sharing a story. I have a story. We do as women, supporting women loving women. I just think that that's the kind of thing that we need to be doing. And so that would be the question.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a great question. Yeah, I do. And, Catherine connected me with like 3 or 4 great women that I'm just falling in love with. So she was a great source. But if you don't ask, the question,
exactly,
you don't find the people you're looking for. So, don't be afraid to talk about what's in your heart and be open to other people coming into the journey with you, because boy, does it make life richer. Yeah.
Toby, those are iconic words. Seriously. I think that's what happens. And especially with relationships, like we have them with whomever our girlfriends are. And we might have limited conversations with them, but being able to expand the conversation, that's how we got to this. And so I think that matters for everyone, no matter where we are. It matters that we share
even you, Marla, you've introduced me to someone else whom I'm having on my podcast too, whose name is Carla. So Marla and Carla, but it just happens. You just talk to people and you find someone else and it just expands your network. So, be open out there and talk about what you're doing. I think that's beautiful. Remember, none of us is our worst mistake. We all have so much more to offer the world, and those so-called mistakes are blessed opportunities to learn and grow. Next week, we'll continue to bring you inspiring stories by people who've identified a need for change and are working to make a difference in the world. Subscribe to our Patreon channel, Fierce Conversations, for special access and behind-the-scenes info. Go to patreon.com/Fierce Conversations or click on the link in the show notes. 10% of the Patreon proceeds are dedicated to providing workbooks to women in prison. The show notes will also provide a link to a website where you can reach Marla and a link to purchase my memoir, Living with Conviction. As I talk about in depth in my memoir, I had a conversation in prison where my friend Lisa told me, in here, we can talk about all the hard things. In fact, I think we must, and so we shall. This is Fierce Conversations with Toby, where we talk about the hard things. Until next time.